Good news. I'm living with 5 incredibly beautiful girls. Bad news. They are my siblings. Great news. They're not actually related by blood. The Shiunji family has 7 children in total, all stunningly attractive. Arata is the eldest son, and yet, he has never been in a relationship. He seeks advice from his younger brother, Shion. Meanwhile, their sisters join in, always teasing poor Arata. He's been relentlessly mocked by his younger sisters, and deliberately seduced by his older sisters because of a past mistake with the youngest, Kotono. However, their eldest sister, Banri, shows understanding, reasoning that being surrounded by such charming girls daily, some fortunate incidents are bound to happen. Seiha, the academic ace, disagrees, reminding them of the genetic risks of close relations. Thankfully, Manami still defends her brother. Just as Arata moves to thank her, he's reflexively punched by her. Suddenly, Uka asks if they're free on Saturday to go out after celebrating Kotono's birthday. The Shiunji daughters, each a breathtaking beauty with their own fan clubs, make many passersby envy their supposed blissful life. However, Arata, as the eldest brother, finds it overwhelming. Despite being the oldest, he can't retaliate when beaten up at home and feels his parents are biased towards the girls. Thus, Arata and Shion have long endured bullying by their 5 sisters. Yet they can't deny their sister's excellence. Eldest sister Banri, 18, attends a prestigious university. Seiha, 17, a high school senior and science club president. Uka, 16, excels in academics and sports. Manami, 15, a tennis prodigy until last year. And Kotono, 14, the youngest with a massive fan base due to her cute, introverted personality. Even so, Arata and Shion must maintain appropriate thoughts about their sisters, despite a secretive past incident between Arata and Kotono. Arata, though the eldest, is quite immature. Despite his good prospects, he only harbors secret crushes and hesitates even to befriend them. As he contemplates this, Uka enters, finds him studying neatly, and joins him. Arata inadvertently glances at her and comments on her scant attire, leaving Uka speechless. They've bathed together since childhood, she reminds him. Curious, Uka asks about Arata's crush. Learning they're on the same committee, she offers to connect them but is stopped by Arata, who asks her not to meddle. Offended by his ungratefulness, Uka storms out, cursing that Arata will never find a good wife. In her room, Kotono was looking at a family photo, focusing solely on Arata. Surprisingly, she harbored inappropriate feelings for her own brother. Meanwhile, Arata's first love ended before it could even begin. After school, he saw the girl he liked with another boy. She already had a boyfriend. Arata felt bitter and wondered if his life would have been different if he weren't a Shiunji. But there was no time to dwell on it, as today was Kotono's 15th birthday party. All 7 siblings had dressed up, but soon after sitting down, Uka and Manami began arguing over a lost earphone. Uka criticized Manami for focusing too much on sports instead of studying. The argument escalated, leading Uka to harshly say she didn't want Manami as a sister. Unable to bear it, Arata intervened, urging them to speak kindly as siblings. Just then, their father arrived, and they toasted to Kotono's birthday. However, he announced that they were not real siblings, but his adopted children, except for Shion and Manami, who were actual twins. The rest were not blood-related. He urged them to accept this reality quickly. Then dinner was served. But the mood was dampened by the revelation. Everyone struggled to accept it. After the party, the siblings discussed the matter. Only Manami seemed unaffected, while the others were bitter. Uka knew it wasn't their father's fault, but wished for better timing. Seiha thought it was the best time. Uka understood, but felt lonely. She asked the eldest, Banri, for her thoughts. Banri, who was 4 when Kotono joined the Shiunji family, barely remembered her childhood. She thought of something, but remained silent. Nevertheless, they had lived together for 15 years, and Banri couldn't stop seeing them as her siblings, regardless of blood ties. Everyone agreed, except Kotono, who stayed quiet. After the meeting, they returned to their rooms. Arata was also conflicted, but agreed with Banri. What else could be done? He went to bathe, found underwear in the laundry basket, and felt no fantasies. This was no harem comedy. They had grown up together. Even knowing they weren't related by blood wouldn't change anything. As he undressed and entered the bathroom, he found Kotono bathing. Quickly wrapping a towel around himself, he attempted to leave, but Kotono stopped him, asking for help with scrubbing her back as he had done before. Arata obliged, focusing solely on helping without any improper thoughts. After finishing, he reminded her to keep warm and left. In the living room, Uka and Shion were talking. Shion hadn't spoken much earlier. Uka wanted to know what he thought. Shion felt it was surreal, but Uka was more interested in Arata's thoughts. Despite not being blood-related, they had been raised as twins for 16 years. Shion reassured her that Arata likely felt the same. His role as the heir wouldn't change, and he was still the reliable older brother. At least he and Manami were real twins. The only change was their genetic relationship. They couldn't truly fall in love as siblings. Unknown to them, at that moment in the bathroom, a naked Kotono embraced Arata. On the day they found out that none of the siblings were blood-related, Arata was confessed to by his younger sister. Since they weren't biologically related, there were no legal restrictions against marriage. Nevertheless, Uka found Shion's confession to be disgusting. Recalling Arata's recent unusual behavior, she asked Shion if she knew what was going on between him and Kotono. When they arrived that day, Kotono was already pinned under Arata. Besides the two involved, only Shion knew the full story. With the situation as it was, Shion had to confess. Initially, it was Kotono who confessed her feelings to Arata. At the time, the siblings didn't yet know they weren't blood-related. As the eldest, Arata naturally rejected Kotono, but she wouldn't listen and hugged him, leading to their awkward position. Arata kept it a secret to avoid gossip about Kotono. However, they both felt that Kotono had confused respect and affection, though it was clear she was serious. Hearing the news today, she immediately tried to seduce Arata and asked him if she was a bad girl. Arata couldn't bring himself to be harsh with his sister, telling her that it's normal during adolescence to mistakenly think one has romantic feelings for someone close, regardless of their relationship. He reassured her that he would always be there as her big brother and protect her until she becomes someone else's bride. This was essentially a gentle rejection. Kotono silently returned to the bathhouse, and after Arata left, she muttered to herself, "How long does adolescence last anyway?" Arata sneaked back to his room only to find Seiha inside, who immediately questioned where he had been. Arata couldn't admit he was bathing with Kotono and lied about just wandering around, but Seiha easily saw through the lie, though he didn't press further. Instead, he abruptly brought up the time when they were 10 and used rock, paper, scissors to decide rooms. Uka won the biggest room, and Arata, the eldest, came last. Despite listening, Arata still didn't understand what Seiha really wanted. Suddenly, Seiha stood in front of him, pushed him onto the bed, and climbed on top, pressing down on him to listen closely to his heartbeat. Caught off guard, Arata couldn't even remember to reject him, wondering if Seiha might harbor feelings like Kotono. But then Seiha remarked that there seemed to be no serious anomaly, which Arata found relieving. It turned out Seiha had seen him bathing with Kotono and heard their conversation. Arata hurriedly pushed Seiha off, realizing Seiha had sensed Kotono's feelings for him all along. They likely mistook sibling closeness for romantic interest, causing Kotono to lose her resolve today. Fortunately, Arata kept his composure and firmly rejected his sister, though he knew similar incidents might still occur. Seiha had deliberately tried to seduce Arata to confirm that even under pressure from his sisters, he would not harbor romantic feelings towards them. Arata accepted this explanation, but Seiha reminded him that even though the country prohibits incest, that restriction no longer applied to them as siblings. He couldn't guarantee how long his words would deter Kotono. Seiha then provocatively suggested that since they were not blood-related, even physical relationships were permissible, which confused Arata, and he quickly left. Arata felt emotionally drained. Having lived with his siblings for 16 years, he struggled to accept that they were not biologically related. The next morning, he was still pondering this when he saw his eldest sister and younger sister dressed in uniforms for Banri's internship, asking if he liked it. Arata emphasized they were siblings and should avoid such inappropriate topics. He then left with Shion, escorted by their eldest sister. The sibling trio stood out, unaffected in their school life. Despite a day passing, the revelation still felt unreal to Arata. After school, he met Manami, the most lively among them and very popular among the girls. Just out of the school building, she was surrounded by girls wanting pictures with her. Manami, who had gained a lot of female fans recently, fulfilled their requests. Arata was astonished that even Manami was stealing all the female attention. With no practice needed today, Arata asked if she wanted to hang out, only for Manami to sheepishly confess she needed to attend tutoring for failing her exams. Acknowledging everyone has weaknesses, Manami, though athletically gifted, lagged academically in their family. Arata took on his role as an elder brother and decided to help Manami study at a karaoke venue. While studying, he couldn't help but notice Manami's androgynous yet attractive appearance. However, Manami soon got distracted and started singing again, leading Arata to follow along, realizing he was happiest with her. After singing, they decided to head home without further studying. There, Arata encountered the girl he had a crush on, along with her boyfriend, and immediately hid, unwilling to face this harsh reality. Manami quietly observed this. On their way home, Arata discussed yesterday's revelation with Manami, who seemed the most normal about it since she was mostly concerned about their biological parents and worried about the sensitive Kotono. To Manami, the bond they shared over 15 years was what really mattered. She then cheered up Arata, saying not to be down about his crush having a boyfriend, revealing she knew from Uka. Manami comforted him by listing his good qualities, hoping he would regain his spirits. She also returned a pair of headphones she had found to Uka, and the sisters reconciled, sharing a cake together. Since confessing to his elder brother, Kotono now ignores Arata. Arata is conflicted, unsure if his sister really listened to what he said that day. Caught daydreaming by Seiha, it was revealed that Seiha had tested Arata and confirmed his feelings towards his sister were appropriate. Meanwhile, the lively Manami appeared, still engrossed in the fighting game they played yesterday, calling him Senior. Seiha mocked this, suggesting such a title should be for someone more mature. Arata, used to this, is the least regarded among his siblings. Unexpectedly, at school, he saw his crush. Oka asked if he didn't want to confess, which Arata obviously did, but she already had a boyfriend. Poor Arata, his first love ended before it began. After speaking, Oka returned to her friends, surrounded by a crowd of girls, a true charmer. Arata really wanted to share how domineering she is at home. Then, those girls noticed Arata, only now realizing he was also a different type of handsome from Shion. They even discussed confessing to Arata. Oka quickly intervened, listing Arata's flaws in a flustered manner, blushing as she did. Would a normal sister notice so much about her brother? Unfortunately, Arata, oblivious, missed the hints. On the weekend, the 7 siblings went to a marine park for Kotono's birthday. Upon arrival, Oka and Manami excitedly ran off, with Manami complaining of hunger. Banri, as the eldest, went to buy food, asking Arata to help. When they returned, everyone was gone, and no one answered their phones. Banri suggested a date with Arata, confident they wouldn't get lost. They ate all the food, with Banri playfully clinging to Arata's arm, making him blush and look away. Banri noticed and teased him about feeling a soft touch near his elbow, posing seductively, which was too much for Arata, who quickly pulled away. Walking together, being seen with such a beautiful sister was a privilege for Arata, garnering almost constant looks. As they walked, Banri whispered that she would let him touch her if they were at home, making Arata blush and trip up the stairs. She helped him up, and they rode a roller coaster together. Attempts to call the others failed. Meanwhile, Oka and the others speculated where the playful eldest sister might take Arata. Kotono, silent and seemingly concerned, was encouraged by Manami to try everything she wanted to play, showing sibling care. As evening approached without contact, Arata and Banri rested. Banri ate a roll for energy, giving Arata a chance to ask her opinion. Surprised but not dismayed, Banri listened as Arata expressed his hope that nothing would change among the siblings. Touched by his expression, she couldn't resist ruffling his hair. Knowing she was the eldest, she had resolved to protect her siblings, reassuring Arata she would always be there to help. As they prepared to leave, A little girl accidentally spilled her drink, and Arata shielded Banri, getting soaked. The girl apologized quickly, and Banri helped clean Arata, who declared his intent to protect as well. Being her brother made Banri's heart flutter. After sending the girl and her mother away, the other 5 siblings arrived, and all 7 finally reunited. However, Banri and Arata stayed back, with Banri secretly holding Arata's hand and smiling brightly. Before they knew it, it was evening, and the amusement park was still bustling. Oka, running at the front, was like a princess, with Manami cheering her on. Arata didn't want to join in and decided to use the restroom, with Shion and Kotono following him. Once they left, Seiha, who knew about the situation, immediately told the other sisters about Kotono's confession to Arata. The other 3 were quite shocked. Seiha confirmed that Arata showed no romantic excitement and detailed her testing method. Oka was speechless, and Banri and Manami were amazed at Arata's lack of reaction. According to Arata's reaction, it seemed that Kotono's confession was impulsive. She wanted to discuss a peaceful solution with her sisters. However, Banri thought Kotono wasn't serious, possibly driven by hormones, and they couldn't blame their younger sister. To avoid embarrassing Kotono, they decided to pretend they didn't know about it. Oka was silent, recalling the recent incident in the game room. She had asked Shion, who said Kotono initiated that too. It seemed Kotono might be serious about her feelings for Arata, which started before they knew they were not blood-related. Once they found out, it fueled her already burning affection. Nevertheless, Banri still believed it was hard to imagine Kotono being serious, especially after being told they weren't real siblings. Banri had even discussed this with their father, asking about her own origins. He said they were essentially orphans. They decided to observe Kotono's situation for now, since Arata had no such feelings. After deciding this, the trio returned. They discussed where to go next. After a fun day, they visited a souvenir shop. Arata felt exhausted and couldn't help but steal a glance at Kotono, who seemed as calm as usual, which relieved him. Despite recently learning about their situation, it was nice that the siblings could still hang out like before. Arata thought to himself, "Don't worry, Dad. Nothing will change." Before reaching the souvenir shop, the park's fireworks show started. They enjoyed the fireworks bursting in the sky, feeling like one family. Unexpectedly, at the souvenir shop, Arata saw the girl he had a crush on. Fortunately, she didn't see him. Then, Oka came out, uninterested in the souvenirs, and went for a walk with Arata, taking the chance to tell him something that she also liked Arata. After Kotono, Oka also confessed to Arata. When he heard the word, like, Arata thought he had misheard. He suddenly remembered discussing a similar topic with Shion. Once it was established that there was no blood relation, these siblings were just close friends of the opposite sex. Shion had even told Oka about Arata and Kotono's situation. Oka herself didn't believe Arata would do such a thing. Arata firmly believed that even without a blood relation, they were still siblings. And now Oka had confessed to him too? But in the next second, Oka corrected herself. She just felt that even though she always liked to tease Arata, she was actually glad they were twins and thought he, as the eldest, handled the situation with Kotono very well. That's when Arata realized that Oka's like wasn't the romantic kind. Indeed, his former twin sister was quite tsundere. Annoyed, Oka left, leaving Arata alone to regret and agonize. However, that like might actually have been the kind Arata was thinking of after all. The next morning, Arata was working out in the gym. Before long, Manami also arrived. Arata did not dream of becoming a professional athlete. He had just grown accustomed to using exercise to calm himself, a habit instilled by their strict father. Out of their 7 siblings, only Manami insisted on training every day, so Arata had always admired this sister. Unbeknownst to him, Manami had accidentally overheard his secret. Last night, when Arata and Oka went out for a walk, Manami went out to find them. Just as she was about to greet them, she heard Oka say that she liked Arata, which scared her into turning back immediately without hearing the rest of the conversation. This made her especially curious about the relationship between Arata and Oka, but she was too embarrassed to ask her brother directly. She could only try to hide her anxiety through exercise. However, she couldn't hold back any longer, and finally asked what was going on between Arata and Oka. Arata responded with a question, asking what she meant. Although he often argued with Oka, their relationship was very good now. Hearing Arata's normal reaction, Manami was reassured, but she still couldn't help but be concerned about that like. On the other hand, Arata became concerned, wondering why Manami would suddenly ask such a question. Could it be that she had some thoughts about the siblings after hearing what their father said? Arata pondered this as he entered the bathroom. As he opened the door, he saw Seiha nearly naked and quickly withdrew. However, Seiha didn't react much. After all, this wasn't the first time. She continued undressing and told Arata not to mind, citing some theoretical research, before going inside to shower. Arata casually helped her close the door, noticing that her clothes were stuck in the door crack, so he threw them into the laundry basket. He realized that of all the siblings, Seiha was the least affected by the revelation that they were not related by blood. She never really cared much about blood relations anyway. At that moment, Arata saw a ring on the washstand, an important keepsake from their mother, which Seiha could now wear. Since the bathroom was occupied, Arata went back to do another set of exercises but accidentally overdid it. Then, his eldest sister Banri knocked on his door, claiming she wanted to check on her beloved little brother's room. She casually started up Arata's computer. Arata quickly took it back, asking Banri what she wanted, given that she hadn't visited his room in 2 years. Banri suddenly brought up that he was almost 17 and wondered why he didn't have any letters he wouldn't want others to see. Then she asked if he wanted to go on a date with her. The topic jumped so suddenly that Arata was a bit confused, but he still went out with his sister. Banri just remembered Arata had mentioned wanting a new smartphone, so she took this opportunity to buy him one. Of course, if Arata wanted to take things further, it wouldn't be a problem. Arata blushed at his sister's flirting. They went to select a smartphone, and after hearing the salesperson's pitch, Arata chose a model. Suddenly, Banri said that choosing a smartphone is like choosing a partner. The qualities one looks for in a smartphone reflect what one values in a partner. Clearly, Arata values the inside, but to Banri, appearance is also important. Soon the salesperson came back and mentioned that there was a discount for couples. Banri immediately leaned on Arata, telling the salesperson they were a couple. Unfortunately, Arata didn't want to lie and didn't understand why his sister kept teasing him. Then, Banri spotted an ice cream shop and immediately pulled Arata to buy some, showing a rare innocent side. While eating, she brought up when Arata was 11, Manami accidentally ate Kotono's ice cream. Kotono didn't dare to speak up, so Oka stood up and scolded Manami, which eventually involved all the sisters and turned into a big quarrel. Since then, whenever Kotono was upset, she would hide in the closet. Nonetheless, they were still the best siblings, and these memories were treasures to Banri. At this point, Banri finally brought up a serious topic, asking Arata if he had any troubles lately. Arata denied having any, and Banri assured him that he could talk to her about any problems. Meanwhile, Kotono was in her room looking at photos from a trip to the amusement park when she received a message in the group chat. It was a selfie of Banri with Arata. Kotono felt a bit jealous, but she still saved the photo and didn't reply to the message in the chat. Banri checked her phone and, although she initially planned to take Arata to another location, suddenly announced that they would call it a day as she had some matters to handle. Arata had no objections, but curiously asked Banri if she had no one else to hang out with. After all, dates are usually something you do with a boyfriend, right? Banri felt relieved and mentioned that such matters were still too premature for young kids before leaving alone. Passersby almost couldn't help but look back at her as she walked away. However, Arata still felt that what's inside matters more. It turned out that Banri was acting on Manami's request to subtly probe Arata today, but nothing unusual came up. Even though her elder sister said so, Manami couldn't help but dwell on the like she had overheard. She reasoned that if there really was something between them, Arata wouldn't have acted so normally. She picked up her phone to message Banri, saying that something between Oka and Arata was impossible. She must have misheard. But after sending, she realized she had posted it to the group chat of the 5 sisters. Panicked, she immediately retracted the message. Just as she retracted it, Oka walked in. Manami sweated profusely, comforting herself that in such a brief time, no one would have seen it. Unfortunately, even in that brief second or two, Kotono happened to see it. Arata noticed that Seiha had been looking thoughtful lately, so he proactively offered that she could share any troubles with him, her brother. Surprisingly, Seiha took him up on his offer and brought a game of Twister to his room. She explained that ever since their last activities in his room, she had been feeling a rush of excitement. Holding on to such unclear emotions could be risky, so she wanted to use this opportunity to clarify her feelings. In short, Seiha realized that she might have developed feelings for Arata. As she explained, she spun the spinner and followed the game's instructions, placing her right hand on the red spot and using her previous help with Arata's homework as leverage to ensure his cooperation. Arata complied, and as the game brought them closer, he was both terrified and somewhat expectant of what was to come. Now, Seiha was positioned with her legs open towards Arata, blocking any escape route. Arata had no choice but to surrender on the spot. However, Seiha was relentless, questioning why he would surrender when there was still some distance between them. Was it an admission of his desires for her? Meanwhile, Seiha was also getting more excited. Now Arata needed to place his right foot on blue, but the only blue spots left were behind Seiha. He had to stretch his leg under her, accidentally touching her bottom. In the process, it was unclear whether it was intentional or an accidental on purpose. Eventually, both were nearly suspended in midair, while Seiha continued to recite her theoretical knowledge. She explained that happiness consists of 3 brain chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. Apparently, couples secrete a lot of dopamine in the first 3 months of dating, and also a lot of oxytocin from sexual activity with a loved one. As she spoke, Seiha's face turned red, but she wanted to understand exactly where these changes started. She kept spinning the wheel, theorizing that if they could share joys and sorrows for 50 years, couldn't anyone come to trust each other, including a brother she lived with daily? The more Arata listened, the more he felt something was off. Topics like trust, fate, and romance, were these really things siblings should discuss? Before he could figure out how to respond, Seiha lost her balance and ended up sitting on his chest. Arata tried not to dwell on the contact, hypnotizing himself that it was just an accidental touch of her bottom. Fortunately, Seiha concluded her experiment. The results confirmed that she had indeed been overthinking last time. Now she could focus on her studies without distractions, even expressing gratitude towards her understanding brother. Arata finally realized that his sister was just a quirky. Arguing with her would only lead to his own frustration. Just as he let out a frustrated roar, Aoka startled him by inviting him to play video games that evening. Although he agreed, he was still preoccupied with the conversation he had overheard that night. Knowing Oka wasn't good at games, he initially let her win, but soon realized she just wanted to enjoy the game, dancing around and not even noticing when she accidentally touched his thigh. Seeing her innocence, Arata stopped holding back and defeated her thoroughly, which she didn't appreciate at all. She tackled him offline, clinging to him like an octopus, with her legs around his waist and arms choking him. Arata struggled desperately, instinctively flipping Oka underneath him. Their eyes met, hands intertwined, creating an awkward atmosphere. Arata again hypnotized himself, insisting this was just normal sibling interaction. Suddenly, Oka said, "So, you've become a man," leaving Arata puzzled by her meaning. She pushed him away and left the room, her cheeks flushed as she exited. Arata was left alone, wrestling with his thoughts, unaware that their entire conversation had been overheard by Kotono. That day, their father called Arata over and suddenly asked if he had someone special. Meanwhile, the 5 sisters were discussing love, each sharing their ideal types. Oka's ideal was a highly educated, high-earning, tall, handsome man. Seiha had more comprehensive plans, detailing her blueprint for the future. Minami casually asked Kotono, but then thought better of it, considering her too young for such topics. Kotono stayed silent, just listening to her sisters. After the chat, everyone went to their rooms to sleep, but Kotono suddenly stopped them, shouting, "I like Arata as a man." The 4 sisters turned around and exchanged looks before Banri eased the awkwardness, saying everyone knew Kotono adored Arata the most. Kotono clarified that she liked Arata as a man, and since they weren't related by blood, it meant they could date and even be lovers. Thus, all her sisters were her rivals. She had been thrilled when she first heard the news and even decided she would marry Arata. Meanwhile, their father was still probing into Arata's love life, but Arata countered by asking why he married their mother. Without hesitation, his father said it was because of her looks, then mentioned a promise to show them something in the 8th room when they were adults. The siblings were curious, some even speculating it was a portal to another world. Arata didn't care much. He knew his father was a wise man and believed there was a reason for revealing the truth at this time. Regardless, as the eldest son, Arata took pride in being able to protect his family, telling his father to focus on work while he handled home affairs. Arata went out for an early morning jog, and the sisters were also feeling uneasy. Yesterday, Kotono said she wanted to marry their older brother, leaving them at a loss for words. However, Minami had a tennis match coming up soon and tried to clear her mind to prepare for her training. Unexpectedly, she ran into Arata, who had just returned from his jog. Arata noticed something was off with his sister. Knowing she had a match coming up, he told her she could talk to him, her older brother, anytime she had concerns. However, Minami still refused. After returning home, Arata encountered their eldest sister Banri, who was feeding their family dog. The dog, feeling neglected because Arata went jogging without it, bit him on the butt. At that moment, Shion also came downstairs, and while Banri and Shion were talking, the dog gave Arata a thorough scolding. Meanwhile, Manami arrived at the tennis court to start practicing, but something seemed off with her foot. Her teammates didn't notice and kept praising her performance during the break, asking her for tips. Unfortunately, Minami's explanations were too abstract, and they couldn't understand. Then, Minami saw an upperclassman and decided to play a match with her, easily winning. After this national tournament, the senior would graduate from the club. Initially, when she heard a talented junior high student was joining, she wondered what kind of brat Manami would be. Although Manami was cocky, she worked harder than anyone, bringing energy to the whole team. This was the first time the senior genuinely hoped a junior would succeed. Their school was weak in tennis, but Manami was an undefeated legend. The senior truly hoped Manami won the championship. Later, Manami heard from another club member that the club president didn't get a university recommendation, meaning she would stop playing tennis after this competition. She had an agreement with her parents to work if she didn't get a scholarship. Everyone felt sorry for the senior but couldn't help her. Minami felt bitter because she was the one saved. When she first joined the club, she easily defeated the senior, who didn't hold it against her but reminded Minami of the joy of playing tennis. Therefore, Minami resolved to win the gold medal for her senior. She was still training in their home gym in the evening when Arata found out. He barged in, offering to be her trainer, and directly pointed out Minami was injured. At first, Minami denied it, but their housemate had seen her changing bandages and told Arata. Arata couldn't scold his sister for risking her body but chose to stay by her side and support her training. Minami let her brother join her, insisting it was nothing serious. Arata recalled doing stretches with Minami since they were children, but her physique had changed. For some reason, he thought of Oka and shook his head to clear it, observing Minami's body as he helped her stretch, realizing that the tomboy Minami was actually a stunning beauty. Manami hadn't told her teammates about her foot injury because they all looked forward to her performance. Nevertheless, Arata advised her to withdraw from the competition if her condition worsened. Manami argued back. Although there were substitutes, they were not from a strong school, and she felt she must win this competition for someone. So, the victory was indispensable. With his sister so determined, Arata couldn't persuade her further. Then it was Manami's turn to stretch Arata, and the atmosphere suddenly became awkward, although it seemed only Arata noticed. After the training, Arata decided to return to his room but bumped into Kotono in the living room. Since that day, they had hardly been alone together. Kotono was silent, and Arata didn't know what to say. He treated her like his sister, telling her to get into bed quickly after her bath to avoid catching a cold. However, Kotono suddenly asked if he had been with Manami. Arata explained they were just training, but Kotono asked if anything strange had happened. Frightened, Arata thought she might have noticed Minami's injury, and quickly denied it. Both were more panicked than the other, and ultimately, neither said anything to each other. On the day of the preliminaries, Manami competed with all her might. Her teammates prayed for her from below, while Manami focused solely on winning for her senior. She successfully advanced to the finals, which were scheduled for the following Sunday. Everyone hoped Manami would continue her momentum and win the championship. However, only Manami knew that her leg was almost at its limit. That evening, she continued to have her brother help her with stretching, mentioning that she had discussed her foot issue with her coach. The coach promised to introduce her to a trainer, which somewhat reassured Arata. Indeed, professional intervention was necessary for such matters. On the day of the competition, Arata woke up early and saw Banri eating breakfast in just a shirt, taking every opportunity to flirt with her brother, even playfully touching his muscles. At that moment, Seiha came asking if they had seen Manami. Both Arata and Banri were surprised. Wasn't Manami supposed to be at her match today? Perhaps she had left early? But her tennis shoes were still at the entrance. Uka and Kotono also hadn't seen her. They couldn't find her anywhere in the house. It was at this point that Arata began to panic. On the day of the most crucial match, Minami suddenly vanished. Just as her siblings were discussing where to search, she reappeared having only gone to a convenience store. But it was already 9 a.m., though team members were supposed to depart by 7 o'clock. Manami insisted cheerleaders just needed to arrive before the match started, then dashed upstairs, ignoring everyone's confusion. Arata, assuming Manami's injury prevented her from competing, went to console his sister only, to find her lying in bed, snacking. Minami finally confessed. The club president had discovered her injury and absolutely refused to let her participate, ordering her to rest. Yet Arata saw through her forced smile after all. She'd previously stated she had to win this match for someone special. Exiting Manami's room, Arata was immediately intercepted by Shion. That morning, Shion had accidentally seen Manami crouched, crying in a corner, only now understanding she'd been removed from the finals roster. As twins, Shion knew Manami prioritized others' feelings over her own, feigning energy to avoid worrying people. yet always suffering deepest. Hearing this, Arata stormed back into Manami's room. Outside, Aoka and others had prepared a car to rush her to the venue, but Manami hesitated, her confidence shaken. When the president noticed her foot injury and informed the coach, both opposed her competing. Despite Manami's vehement arguments about wanting victory for her senior, she ultimately lost her spot. Precisely because they cared, the senior and coach couldn't allow her participation. Arata now shared their concerns, repeatedly urging, "If you compete, withdraw immediately if anything feels wrong, and stop lying to others and yourself." Meanwhile, fierce matches had begun at the stadium. Stuck in traffic near the venue, Oka frantically asked Arata for solutions. Spotting roadside bicycles, Arata realized cycling would outpace running or cars. Since Seiha had a shared bike account, Arata swiftly took Manami on a bicycle, Shion handing over her racket. Pedaling desperately, Arata gasped for breath yet reminded Manami of 5th grade when their school forced students to write letters to mothers. For siblings orphaned young, this reopened wounds. Oka wrote nothing through tears, but Minami penned, "Though mom's gone, our bonds grew stronger." This first made Arata realize their loss had positive impacts. Through every era, cheerful Manami remained irreplaceable in their family. Her relentless training matched natural talent gym sessions, sweating tirelessly, even inspired Arata to respect his younger sister. Demanding promises she wouldn't act recklessly or regret, Arata felt Manami silently hug his waist with a muffled, Meanwhile, the senior had secured victory in the first singles match. As the second match was about to begin, Manami arrived at the critical moment. Before she could speak, Arata dropped to his knees with a thud, pleading to let his sister compete. He vowed Manami had promised not to cause trouble. Emphasizing this match meant as much as her future. Witnessing her brother's desperation, Manami's resolve pierced through her gaze. The senior, moved by this determination, joined others in persuading the coach. Manami finally became the second singles player, swearing internally to win. Her siblings arrived to cheer, their support steadying Manami's nerves. She focused intently to return every shot, landing devastating strikes initially. Though outclassing her opponent, the grueling rallies strained her injured foot. Yet she moved without hesitation. Ultimately, she lost. Forcing a smile, she joked, "Maybe we'd have won with the original lineup," urging the senior to blame her. Instead, the senior bowed deeply, like frightened. How could she reprimand Manami? Without Manami's relentless drive and spirit, the team wouldn't have reached finals. The senior thanked her formally on behalf of the club, hoping this loss wouldn't haunt Manami's future. The words shattered Manami's composure into sobs. Later, siblings waited in the car, finding Manami alone on a bench. Arata embraced her as she instinctively smiled, a mask cracking over regret and guilt. Why thank me when I failed? Even scolding would hurt less. Yet she confessed gratitude. Staying home would have bred lifelong regret. As she feigned normalcy to return, Arata yanked her into his arms. "Stop lying. You're allowed to cry." Minami broke, weeping. "I don't know how to make amends, but I'll never lose again. I'll grow stronger." Arata tightened his hold. He'd always believed she could.